Welcome to another episode of the Market Makers in Middle East and Africa podcast. I am your host Abrar Hussain. Today I speak to Shant Oknayan, the VP at ByteDance and TikTok Global Business Solutions. Shant, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Abrar. Look forward to it.
Shant, you have had a very successful career across large companies and now at TikTok. Tell us about your story.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I probably describe myself with two chapters. The first is I'm a globalista. What I mean by that is I'm of Armenian heritage. My parents are from the Middle East, though. I was born and raised in Italy. I was schooled in the UK and US. I started my career across Europe. Now been in Dubai 17 years and covering Asia, Australia, Middle East, and Africa. So got quite the global context. The second facet is that I'm a fond believer of business and technology together. My schooling was around those lines, right? Both an engineering degree and a business degree. Have been a digital strategist in consulting at the early stages of my career, and then have been working for big digital giants, the likes of Google, Meta, and now ByteDance, TikTok for the last 15 years.
Perfect, very interesting, and I'm very impressed by your kind of global career and global background. Shant, when it comes to TikTok and ByteDance, tell us a bit more about the size, about the business, and the impact you are having not only in the region but across the world.
So I joined ByteDance just shy of 5 years ago. And the way I like to describe the journey is it's a rocket ship on an interstellar mission. Now, a lot of companies like to use that analogy, right, of a rocket ship. I think the difference here being we're flying that rocket while we're building it. So the last 5 years has really been about what and how are we going to achieve our mission of inspiring creativity and bringing joy, which is the mission that TikTok has. And more broadly, at a ByteDance level, how do we enrich life through technology? Mm-hmm. And I like frameworks. I like alliterations. I have this 6P framework that I've used over the last 5 years to kind of determine the what and the how we're going to help unlock this mission. The first is product, right? What are the products that we need to keep building and optimizing that solve an actual need for our partners, the second P, right? Whether it's our users, our creators, our business partners, government regulation, and the sorts. What kind of programs do we need to put in place? That's the third P. What kind of initiatives are required to keep spurring the digital economy and helping us achieve our mission? Internally, what kind of policies and processes do we need to operate by in order to run a tight, effective, and efficient rocket ship? And obviously, at the core of it all is the sixth P, which is people. Mm-hmm. The superstar team that needs to embark on this mission and fly that rocket ship and build that rocket ship successfully, because or else it's just a dream and nothing more. So I'd argue that the last 4.5, 5 years have been very much about the what and the how we're trying to achieve as TikTok.
Mm-hmm. And Shant, if you can share some data or some numbers, right? The massive growth you had across different regions. You mentioned, Middle East, Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe. How you managed to kind of lead this growth and what has been accomplished in terms of, the size, the scale, if you can share that.
So there's over a billion users on the platform that come back on a monthly basis, which just shows you kind of the scale that we've managed to achieve over the last 5-6 years. And I think what's important to understand beyond kind of these numbers, these success metrics, which I'll talk about shortly, is what is actually TikTok and why has it kind of caught the world by storm. I'd like to kind of maybe take you through the evolution of digital media. Mm-hmm. And I think that will explain what it is that TikTok has managed to solve when it comes to our consumers and our creators. I believe there's been 4 phases in the digital media space over the last 20, 25 years since the advent of the internet. The first phase was about the portals, mm-hmm. right? in the late 90s, early 2000s. You went on your favorite portals. You liked finance. You went to the finance section. You liked cars. You went to the car section. You followed what an editor was going to present on that portal, and you consumed that content. It was a one-to-many approach, and it was very much about the context that you were interested in. The evolution from that was the era of search engines, right? A search engine saying, well, sometimes you're actively looking for information. You're not just waiting for an editor to create content for you to consume. How do I organize information to be useful and accessible for you, right? And that was the era of search. And then the third evolution from there was social. The likes of some of the big platforms that we use today came by and said, well, sometimes you don't know what you're looking for. How do you discover things in the real world? It's typically word of mouth. So let's create digital word of mouth, social media, the era of social, and the way information is created and then consumed. And it started becoming a few-to-few kind of conversation, right? Anyone could start creating content now and sharing it with their friends, family, and people that follow them. We're now arguably in the fourth phase, which is what we call the era of content. So we went from context to search to social to content, where technology is smart enough to figure out that I don't need to know what you're actively looking for or what your friends and family and your social circles are talking about. I'm going to present content to you that is relevant to you in that given moment. And TikTok, I think, is at the forefront of that. So if we think of that journey over the last 25 years, that's the consumer need that is now being addressed by TikTok. Giving you content not based on the person that you are, right, the demographics, but the personas that you have, right? You might like, you're a dad in the morning, I'll take myself as an example. I'm a dad in the morning doing the school drop-offs, and that's maybe the kind of content that I like to see. During the day, I'm an executive, and there might be content related to the business world that I'm curious about, and that is top of mind. In the evenings, maybe I'm playing paddle or sports, and therefore it's all about sports that I'm passionate about. And maybe after dinner, I'm sitting down with my wife and watching our favorite show, and therefore it's all about entertainment. So there's these different personas that require different type of content at any given time. And now content is being created and consumed based on that persona. So that's just a little bit of a journey as to what TikTok is solving for. Now, 1 billion users on the platform. In this part of the world, we've seen, again, double-digit growth, hundreds of millions of users on the platform. But more interestingly is the fact that people spend almost a movie's length worth of time on the platform every day. And therefore, it's relevant content. People are coming and actively leaning in to consume content that they find adding value to their life. And a few other maybe anecdotes in terms of this region specifically. There's hundreds of years worth of content being created every month. And there's thousands of years worth of content being consumed every month in this part of the world. So just a few maybe numbers or orders of magnitude to qualify what TikTok has achieved over the last 5 years, always based on the fact that we were solving for this era of content, right? And that TikTok is about inspiring creativity and bringing joy. And the way we like to describe TikTok is using 3 words. It's a canvas, it's a bridge, and it's a window. It's a canvas of self-expression, so anybody can create on the platform, and we'll talk about that. It's a bridge to connect you with other people who might be interested in the same type of content. And it's a window into discovering new places, new products, new ideas that you are interested in, but you didn't have access to before. So in a nutshell, I think that's what TikTok has managed to unlock over the last few years.
That's very interesting and really massive growth, Shant. Now, you mentioned about Middle East, that a lot of content is created and consumed. How important is Middle East as a region for TikTok when you're saying that you have globally 1 billion users coming to platforms? So what is the significance of Middle East and Africa region?
We can look at it through a number of lenses. The first is the fact that from a government perspective, there's a lot of emphasis and investment in the creative industries, right? We look at the Saudi 2030 vision. There's a whole section related to how they're going to spur the creative and cultural industries, right, as part of their vision of creating a vibrant society and a diversified economy, etc. You look at the UAE. Again, it's got a culture and creative industry plan whereby they want the creative industries to contribute 5% of GDP at steady state. You've got the Dubai creative economy strategy, where they want to double the number of jobs in the creative industries, right? And again, double the contribution to GDP. So at the highest level, there is an understanding that a knowledge economy, a diversified economy, is very much driven by the creative space and the creative industries. What we're seeing is, obviously, with some of the numbers I shared earlier, there's a huge user population to say we want to not only consume content, but also create content. On the creative side, there's a whole creator economy that has been built over the years and continues to grow at a very rapid pace. I think some of the numbers are almost like $1.5 billion to $2 billion in contribution over the next few years, with some very big creators actually coming out of this part of the world and going global, right? And we've got a few names here that could be interesting in very diverse categories, by the way. You've got the likes of Muhammad Tariq, who is an Egyptian comedian. He's got 4 million followers and has actually done the voiceover for some movies now and has his own podcast, right? From a very humble beginning of being a comedian on our platform. In Ghana, you've got a creator by the name of Dennis Coffey, who wanted to build the untold stories of African sportsmen, right? And start proliferating that across the internet via TikTok. You've got creators like Anil Ilter, who is a Turkish creator who builds educational content with his 14-year-old daughter. You've got someone like Mishal Tamer, who is a Saudi singer, who's even been an opening act for a pop band like One Republic, right? So we're starting to see some big creators not only pursue their passion on the platform, but actually start making a sizable dent in the categories and the content categories that they're interested in. And then finally, brands are also leaning into the creative industries, into the creative economy. There was a survey out there that said that's almost 80% of CMOs realize that leveraging creators to tell their brand story is a very effective way of doing marketing. And we've seen that with some big local players here in the region. An example that comes to mind is Flowered, which is a local startup that sells flowers and gifts online, right? A success story from the region that has been leaning into kind of the creative storytelling on a platform like TikTok very effectively, growing their sales 60% year on year as a result of their work with us. You've got even more, let's call it traditional industries like the financial services industries. A bank in Turkey, Yapı Kredi, that leveraged creators to acquire new consumers for their digital banking proposition. In fact, 27% of their net new customers came through that collaboration with creators. You've even got the Ministry of Culture partnering with Anghami, the Spotify of the Middle East, to create The Sound of Saudi, which was a way to discover the next Saudi talent. Right? There was 26,000 entries, over 1.3 million votes, almost 500 million video views to find the next Saudi talent. So there's a lot of emphasis in this part of the world, both from, as we mentioned, from government, the creation and consumption that we're seeing from users, creators translating their passion into a business, and even brands leaning into the platform to help them grow their business that we've been very excited to experience over the last 4 or 5 years. And we look forward to seeing much more of that in the future.
Shant, when you mentioned that many forces are getting aligned when it comes to the creators and the consumers, the government, and at the same time businesses. How is TikTok? I mean, there is definitely an impact, but if you have any kind of numbers, what is the impact of TikTok when it comes to driving the economy or contribution to the economy across the region?
So I don't have any numbers off the top of my mind, but there are studies that we're doing around the socioeconomic impact of TikTok in the larger economy and specifically the digital economy. So look out for those reports as they get issued. But I think what's interesting is, again, the behaviors that users and creators are exhibiting and want fulfilled that TikTok is enabling. Mm-hmm. So we spoke about how we think of ourselves as a canvas, a bridge, and a window. Now, how that translates is that authentic content is what people want to see in this day and age, especially the newer generations. Not polished content. They want storytelling, not high production value type of content. So I've got a few stats here. Users, 76% of users think that TikTok creators are relatable. Mm-hmm. So it's people that are passionate about specific topics and want to externalize that passion as opposed to just in the pursuit of popularity, which is what we might have seen maybe in a different era, right? Mm-hmm. So it's passion over popularity that TikTok is enabling, which means that it's democratizing
the
content. It's enabling anyone to have a voice, to share their passion, and to find a community that is also like-minded, wants authentic, relatable content in specific topics. Mm-hmm. I think it's become easier to create content as well, and that's one of the product strategies that we have to simplify how easy it is to actually produce content, right? So again, we're democratizing content creation from that perspective. And what we've seen now flourish is communities on the platform around topics of interest. Learn on TikTok, so think of it as kind of the educational side of TikTok, has had over 1 trillion views as a hashtag over the years. Mm-hmm. You've got communities around book talk, which is a fancy way of saying, the traditional book club. You'd meet once a week and you'd give and take on a book that you'd read. That's a very active community on TikTok. Hundreds of billions of views around that topic. Travel is a huge area of passion and discovery on TikTok with over 100 billion views. And even communities like Mom Talk, right? Mothers coming together and sharing experiences and advice and ideas with one another. Mm-hmm. So what we've seen is this authentic content that consumers are hungry to consume is easily created on our platform. Everyone has a voice because it's about passion and not popularity. And what's that leading to is this sense of community around shared interests. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing the evolution from just entertainment into this topic of edutainment. Mm-hmm. So it's not only about pop culture and singing and dancing, which is what might have been the reality on the platform 4 or 5 years ago, right? People are coming to actively learn on the platform as well. Mm-hmm. And the concept of micro-learning is actually very powerful. The Journal of Applied Psychology actually has a study out there that says micro-learning is 17% more effective than longer form content that one might consume traditionally. So we're seeing this evolution on TikTok, especially in this region as well. And I'd be bold enough to say that TikTok has become the cultural zeitgeist, has become the cultural engine. It's where trends start. It starts on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. When you grow business and, Middle East being a very diverse, different cultures, different, countries, and then you go to Africa, it's really different. How does TikTok kind of, transforms its content or features and align it to the region?
So by default, the For You page, the feed that you see on TikTok is hyper personalized, right? It's very much based on who you are as a person and the interests that you have. But we also have very strong community guidelines that may differentiate what type of content you might see in one part of the world versus the other, based on local culture, local regulation, local law as well. But then we are huge proponents of programs and initiatives that enable that local flavor to kind of emerge. We've worked with local publishers, the likes of Telfaz and U-Turn in Saudi, to build Saudi-specific content, to help them flourish their local content on our platform. We've just struck a deal with the Saudi Pro League, SPL, the football league, right? Which has become more and more popular. While we look at hyper-personalization from a content feed perspective for each person, and on a broader level, we've got our community guidelines and regulations to ensure kind of some of that local flavor is being captured. We're also actively enabling the local ecosystem to flourish on TikTok, right? Whether it's publishers, whether it's youth programs, whether it's local creators, with some of the initiatives that I discussed.
And Shant, some of the challenges that you face, right? I mean, when it comes to the region that you manage, a large region, and is specific to Middle East and Africa.
I think a lot of people look at Middle East and Africa as one region. It's not.
It's not.
It's tens of countries, thousands of different languages, sometimes even within the same country. Yeah. And so the shared experience that I have in terms of, let me start with my own teams, internally the type of kind of approach that we've taken to ensure that these different flavors amongst our constituents, our users and creators is being captured internally, is realizing that in a company, you can manage by IQ and EQ, right? The traditional kind of intellectual quotient. People are analytical, they've got cognitive skills, etc. Or EQ, their emotional intelligence, how they deal with a person, right? But I'd argue there's a third axis, which is called CQ, cultural quotient. So you've got IQ, EQ, CQ.
And the CQ.
And it's not to stereotype people, but it's to kind of look at the broader dynamics of the communities that you're engaging with and what matters to them. And so the way I've hired, or we've hired at TikTok is to reflect that. We've got 30, 40 different nationalities just in the Dubai office, right? That give different perspectives from when it comes to different cultures, different approaches in the market. But we're actively always listening to our creators and our users, hearing them out as to what further we can do, whether it's product embellishments or programs that we can launch to enable them further. So I guess the broader takeaway is it's easy to think of Middle East and Africa as one block.
One block, yeah.
It's not. And I think we need to have, as business executives, the humility first and foremost to structure our teams to reflect that very heterogeneous society that we live in, and then to respond to that heterogeneity in the market by constantly, listening and addressing the needs of our stakeholders.
Yeah, no, this relates very well. Shant, this is what I have seen, as you mentioned. Middle East itself, different countries has different needs, both culturally, and Africa is again, very different. In Africa also, you have different countries which are very different, so it needs that cultural quotient as well to manage. Now, coming to tech part, Shant, AI is something that will transform each industry and is transforming each industry. How do you see AI affecting social media, and how TikTok is using it when it comes to user experience, content discovery?
So you and I both know that the concept of AI has been around for decades, right? It's just now that it's become mainstream with generative AI specifically. I mean, I remember learning about neural networks in university in the late 90s. And therefore, machine learning has been at the core of how information is created and consumed on the internet for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's at the core of how we as TikTok ensure that the experience you're having on the platform is hyper-personalized based on your needs, your behaviors, what's of interest to you. So it's not a new tech for us. It's very much at the cornerstone of how the platform is built. What we're seeing with the advent of something like generative AI is a broader set of use cases for AI. And the one that we're kind of actively looking at is the role of AI in the creative industry. How can we leverage the power of AI to make it easier for people and businesses and creators to create content? And we've launched a few product suites that enable that. The one that is probably most relevant is called TikTok Symphony. TikTok Symphony is effectively our creative AI engine that enables primarily brands, but also creators to do automatic script generator. They've got an avatar that helps them go back and forth in terms of what the trends might be and what ideas could be interesting. So storyboarding. It's got digital avatars that can be leveraged, and so you no longer need studios and physical talent, etc. You can leverage these digital avatars to tell a story, right? It makes dubbing. We spoke about Middle East Africa having thousands of languages. It makes dubbing a much easier challenge to overcome because you're using technology to automate that. So we're looking at the use case of generative AI and solving for the area that is very kind of adjacent to what we do, which is kind of creativity.
Shant, apart from AI, it has amazing use cases when it comes to social media. What other trends do you see that is affecting the whole kind of world of digital platform and the social media?
So there's an evolution happening in the e-commerce space. E-commerce has been around 25, 30 years. And it's very transactional in nature today. It solves for a functional need. Can I get it quicker, cheaper, or is there more variety, right? The evolution, again, we're seeing from a consumer perspective is this from functional to experiential commerce. And it's how are you meeting my emotional needs when you're trying to sell me a product? And what that's translated to is, first and foremost, consumers want to see good content from their favorite brands. Entertain me, engage me, excite me, educate me about your products. And as a result of that, there'll be a commercial outcome. So it's content that leads to commerce. We call this trend shoppertainment, right? It's entertainment that leads to shopping outcomes. So it's not just a transactional conversation of, I want this product, I gotta buy it, here I click through, etc. It's, I saw something that I was very interested in, how can I buy it?
I think cybersecurity, right, which is important to most businesses and all the consumers, right? How does TikTok ensures that the data, the content, the personal data is secure and protected?
I'll look at two aspects: user safety and data security. On the user safety side, our community guidelines are something that we keep building and evolving to ensure that the right type of content is on the platform. Hate speech and things of the sort don't have a place on the platform. And we have obviously technology to help moderate all of that content, but we also have thousands, tens of thousands of content moderators who further audit that content before it even makes it onto the platform. We've also released tools to enable user safety, specifically for the more vulnerable kind of users, the younger generations. The app is 13 plus, so You have to be 13 years older or older to access the app.
Yeah.
But even then, from 13 to 17, there are certain guardrails that are by default in the app. The type of content that you can see, the fact that private messaging is not enabled until you're 17. Live streaming is not something that is enabled unless you're older. We've got family pairing tools. So as a parent, and I have 2 children as well, they're still too young to use the platform. So that's the whole dynamic around user safety. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes that might not meet the naked eye, but it's something that's constantly top of mind for us. And then you've got data security. We make it a point to be compliant with local law, right? And to have the latest technologies when it comes to cyber safety and security of people's data. We take that very seriously. And in certain regions, we've even got these broader initiatives. We've got Project Clover in the EU. That is, again, an investment that we're making in the billions of dollars to localize and safeguard user data in Europe, leveraging third-party experts, etc. So it's a topic that is very much a cornerstone of every single conversation that we have as a company and as a platform. But it is uncharted territories in terms of how you can, get to a zero risk type of reality, right? We'll continue to minimize risk, and we do that very well. Will it ever be a zero risk type of environment? I'd argue that the internet in general will never be able to guarantee a zero risk environment. And it's on all of us as tech platforms to keep the trust and safety of our constituents always top of mind, and to keep evolving how we raise awareness, what kind of tools we make available, how we leverage experts, to make sure that it's always a pleasant experience on the platform.
Shant, I had a very good view about TikTok, and thanks for coming. My last question.
Please.
I see that you're very passionate about what you're doing. What leadership principles you follow, and what keeps you motivated to do this? It might be very challenging as well.
Oh, lovely questions. I'll start with the latter. What keeps me motivated? So we have a value, a company value internally that was always day one. I'm a huge believer of how do you keep channeling the excitement that you have the first day on the job, right? Of any job. How do you keep channeling that day in, day out? How do you keep building? How do you keep improving? And so that always day one mentality is something that I take to heart and that I thoroughly enjoy living up to. We're building a rocket ship while it's flying, right? What a fantastic challenge. When it comes to leadership principles, I'm a huge proponent of service-based leadership. I come from the school of thought that leadership is a responsibility. It's not just a power grab. And the responsibility is that of enabling your teams, your constituents to be the best version of themselves. I don't have always the right answers. I don't have all the answers. How do I enable my teams to be empowered to keep pursuing excellence, to be the better version of themselves, to enable their career growth, to speak up and bring crazy, fantastic ideas that maybe we haven't thought about. And I'd like to believe that, I'm being somewhat successful, or at least leaning into that principle.
No, thank you. Great to hear you and great to meet you, Shant.
Likewise.
And thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you, Abrar, for having me.